All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Trin Leon Army podcast. Today I have special guest Ryan Ingram and also reoccurring co-host Tony Rogers. Today we're going to be talking about how to build wealth with real estate, and we actually have a real estate guru, Ryan here, who's going to help shed the light, and teach us, and help guide us. And for one, thank you for coming on, man. I truly appreciate it. Ryan, how'd you get started in real estate, man?
Yep. So I met a fella that on a call because I was in law enforcement, and he was nice enough to show me all of like the real estate that he owned and told me, about the returns that he was getting and how much money he had to like put into the property and whatnot. And it really blew my mind because the returns were significantly higher than anything that I expected. And I kind of always was slightly interested in finances, mainly from like a Christian perspective. And I just wanted to figure out how to have the most impact in the world financially. And, you need that for those resources.
For
so
sure.
I devised this plan to kind of buy dividend stocks because I knew how much money I needed to live on. So my entire financial goal was to accumulate enough dividend stocks to where I didn't really have to work anymore.
That passive income was coming in.
Yeah. Yep. Regardless of whether the stock went up or down, that dividend would be there. And I thought that was the perfect plan because I read a bunch of books on this, and I thought of all possible things that I could do, that would be the best. And once I met this guy, he changed my mind. I was like, well, if what he's saying is true, then my plan is not the best. This makes more sense. So then I started researching real estate, and my whole goal was to kind of disprove what he was telling me because I didn't want to be wrong.
Right.
And in short order, I found out that I was the one that was wrong. So I moved up here to Dayton in 2017, about April of 17, and bought my first duplex in August of 2017.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
So just to be clear here, you thought your plan to wealth and to financial freedom was dividend stock investing. And you met this guy, and then he put you on the real estate.
Yep.
And you looked at his portfolio and saw that, and in future research, you saw that would be a better idea to go with the real estate route. And then you bought your first property, right? How long did it take you to buy your first property from that point to, from setting the goal to doing it?
I would say probably in, April of 2016 is when I met him, started researching real estate, and then from there, about a year of just like doing research and reading.
Okay.
And
before you pulled the first trigger. Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So let me ask you this. So when you decided to get into real estate, like the main thing I feel like the ignorance for me was that it always seemed like a huge barrier. Like when it came to getting into real estate, because when I was overseas, I was like stacking my money and I was like, man, I want to get into it. And now with the market being so inflated, what would you tell like a new investor right now? Like, how would you mentor them to jump into real estate when everything seems so inflated?
Well, I think I'd have to ask some clarifying questions first. So like, what's your appeal to real estate investing? Why would you be interested?
Well, I would say it would be the same reason you got into it.
The passive income.
The passive income. Yeah. And, I've known people who've been able to generate a large sum of wealth by getting into real estate. Of course, it doesn't require a degree. I mean, a lot of education you could do on your own, studying, getting with people and understanding. But the threshold to get into it is not as high as other fields, and let's say academia that requires, that you can make a lot of money, but it requires so much time and energy. Like if you go be a doctor, hell, you in school for years and come out and you're in all this debt. So that's what I didn't want to get into. So out of all the things, real estate has always been like the type of business that can support other businesses if you decided to go that route. So that's the main thing for me. And, hell, I got 7 kids, man. I gotta find a way to build that wealth accumulation. Because, and we text about this, and I was telling you how like I was so focused on how much money I was making, right? I was so focused on, oh man, I'm making a lot. And the income accumulation was nice. Like, oh, I'm making a lot. But, the millionaire next door talks about how based off where I should be as far as wealth, I'm like nowhere near it based off how much I make. And I feel like real estate is an option to get me there. So to my general question, how would you basically tell somebody right now in this market what to do?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good question, but I mean, I think a lot of the conversations regarding around like the current like inflation
Mm-hmm.
or how the bubble's about to burst in the real estate market, and this could kick me in the butt later on for saying this, but I think it's one that is fear based, and one that if you've got the right information at your hands, then you're probably not going to get hurt too bad, regardless of what's happening in the market.
Mm.
And if you talk to people that don't own real estate or people that are looking to get into it, there might be a lot of hesitancy, a lot of apprehension about how prices have increased. But if you talk to the actual like real estate investors, the ones that are out there kind of in the arena operating, then they are, if anything, excited about the future opportunity that will come if a bubble bursts.
Right.
But
Gotcha.
it's one where I don't know. You really got to be careful, I guess, of who you take your advice from, and also like the implications around each market. So I think the errors that I'd like to point out when people do talk about this is the first thing that we have to kind of immediately separate is real estate is not like this homogenous, like national industry, right? Like it's not like the stock market where what's true for stocks in California is true for stocks in New York, which is
Gotcha.
true for stocks in Florida,
Hmm.
right? So when it comes to real estate, a lot is geographically driven. Now, would I right now invest in Silicon Valley or pretty much anywhere in California, New York, New Jersey? No, I wouldn't. So one of the most common questions that I get is, well, I want to get started in real estate, but it's $1 million on average for a house in this area.
Hmm.
It's like, well, it doesn't sound like you're going to get started in real estate, right? Like not
And
all
they're talking about
markets.
that area where they are, that market where they are.
Yep.
Hmm.
So, not all markets are made for those entry level people, right? If you've
Mhm.
already got a massive net worth, then these $1 million houses might be where you want to put your money because
Mhm.
of, certain demographic trends or, a lot of these things that like McDonald's makes these long programs talking about like population growth and, median annual income, all of those things. That those are all positive for markets that are that hot. But like let's use here in Ohio, for example, we've been depressed for a really long time, right?
Mhm.
So these prices that have increased, we're still not even above the replacement cost.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So if you are not above the replacement cost in these homes, then you're still buying them at a discount because with the land, with the property included, you're still getting a huge bargain because you can't go out. If somebody gave you land, you couldn't build a house for less than you could still buy them over
Gotcha.
here,
Gotcha.
Mhm.
right? The other thing that I'd point out, so I guess to tighten that answer up, it's probably at this point not ideal to invest in some markets, but some markets it still makes a lot of sense.
What do
Okay.
you look for to distinguish that? Like, how do we give the viewers something to look for, like that? Maybe a few things to look for in different markets to know when to buy and when not to buy.
Um, and I think one of the cool things about real estate investing is there are just as many different ways to make money in real estate investing as there are people investing in real estate, right?
Really?
So
Okay.
there are, if it's your preference, like if it's your goal to just build generational wealth,
Mhm.
right? Then cash flow immediately might not be so important to you,
Right.
right? There's that to consider.
Mhm.
If you're looking to like retire now and like manage less, then perhaps like getting involved with some other people and getting into multifamily is the best, right? So
Mhm.
it's really difficult to give like personal and actionable advice on like how to get
So it
into
kind of
real
depends
estate
on your
investing.
goal, like you were saying, your goal, your individual needs and wants and risk tolerance and all that.
And I would also kind of double down on that and say it also has everything to do with the type of problems that you're interested in having, right? So,
Good point. Good point.
like multifamily, I'm not interested personally in ever dealing with any sort of intra-tenant drama, right? I don't want to handle any noise complaints. I don't want to talk about this person is upset at this person for this reason.
Now,
right?
it just for our audience who may not be aware of, that's like, is that like above 4 units or whatever, or like a building with a lot of tenants, or just to clarify?
I think probably the larger the building, the more that doesn't apply. But like here in the area, we don't have many like 10, 16, 20 unit
okay.
plus buildings, right?
Mm.
A lot of like if you drive around these streets of Dayton, you'll see several streets that have 20 or 40 units, but they're all in like 4 unit, 3 unit side by side
Gotcha.
type packages.
They'll take up the whole street. I got you.
Mm.
Right. So, since I'm interested in single family, pretty much my whole portfolio is single family. So I just feel like there's a lot more pride of ownership. If you've got a problem with your neighbor, it's not my problem. It's likely a police problem.
Right.
I also think that when somebody is responsible for like taking care of the yard, shoveling the snow, there's a lot that goes into it. And since generational wealth is something near and dear to my heart, like I plan on having these properties for 50, 70, 80 years.
Okay.
Right.
So you're in it for long term. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not interested in having any deferred maintenance. The return is important, but it's not the most important, right? I'm looking to kind of maintain assets that I can pass down. So it's really important to me to partner with people that are living in these houses and say, hey, if something's wrong, let us know. We'll fix it. We're not interested in deferring any of this. So, really difficult. I would say how you invest in real estate is more or less a personal reflection of your goals and interests.
Very, very, very good point there. Let's say, well, how when you got your first property, it was a single family?
Yeah. Oh, it was a duplex.
It's a duplex. Okay. Do you still have that today?
I do.
Gotcha.
I would happily sell it.
Okay.
I learned a lot on that one.
Do you? I'm glad you said. Let's talk about that. What mistakes? Maybe the top 5 mistakes you made during your real estate journey that you can kind of pass on to the viewers, and so they can avoid those mistakes. What are like top 5 or something?
Yeah, so I'm really blessed in this, and that I did a couple of things right that really limited the amount of like true mistakes that I've made. And I would say the most important thing that you could possibly do if you're interested in real estate investing, again, keeping in mind of the thing that I said previously about it's not real estate investing as a whole is not equal, right? So if you discover that you want to focus on single families in, Seattle, Washington, then it's in your best interest to surround yourself with people that are real estate investors in single family homes in Seattle, Washington.
Gotcha.
Wherever those people are, that's where you need to hang out, right? So I kind of taken that advice. I met the fella in North Carolina that got me introduced to the concept of real estate investing. But when I moved up here to Dayton, one of the first things that I did was I sought after people that had real estate investing portfolios of single family homes, or at that point, that's not fair to say, other real estate investors in the area that had the type of portfolio that I was interested in building, and really try to figure out how to kind of create friendships with them.
That's awesome.
How to learn from them.
So you were strategic in building your network based on your specific goals. Like you sought people out who already had what you wanted.
Right. And I, because this is the first time that I'm in front of your audience, just briefly, I was in law enforcement down in North Carolina. I was making like $44,000 a year whenever I left. We don't have unions down there, so the pay is not as nice as it was up here, right? Like if I was a cop up here in one of these union states, it might have been a little bit different.
Yeah.
But, I met my wife. She was an assistant principal. She was making good money, more than me. And when we had our first kid, it was extraordinarily important to us. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to provide for my wife whatever she wants, right? That's kind of how we're hardwired.
Yeah.
So I was very perplexed whenever I realized, financially speaking, like unless we wanted to go paycheck to paycheck, I couldn't provide that. So I had a real fire under me whenever I made this move to Dayton to be really intentional and really strategic, because, mentally what was happening to me is my man card was on the line, right?
Yeah.
Like I just
You got to make it work.
We
got to make it work.
And now, so, that's when I really doubled down on like the financial aspect of everything. So I've always considered myself to be like a high performing individual, and one that was able to kind of achieve what it is that I set my mind out to do. So when I found myself in this position, lacking the finances, it's just like, where in the world did I go wrong?
Mm-hmm.
So
let's dig a little bit deeper in those mistakes. Like, what were those actual mistakes you made?
yeah, so since I was very intentional about surrounding myself with the right people, then when I got up here, I didn't make a single decision before until I had consulted at least 3 or 4 people. So I
Gotcha.
ran it by people that already had portfolios of 30, 40 or more properties. So as far as financially burdensome mistakes, I I haven't made really any. Now I've made one, and this also has to do with a little bit with like timing, right? So since the market has been going up since 2017 when we bought our first property,
Mm-hmm.
like you can stand to make a lot of mistakes. And one of the cool things about real estate investing is if you are in it for the long term, and if you're truly got your 30, 40, 50-year goggles on, then
Mm-hmm.
it's really difficult to make a mistake unless you're just extraordinarily negligent.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you lose 20, 30 grand, well, you
It'll
can
go back up.
amortize that mistake over 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the
Gotcha.
bank's willing to inject their capital into this asset that you now have.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that I have learned from that first duplex, I would say is the one that I just mentioned of I'm not really interested in multi-unit properties.
Gotcha.
There's on occasions now I've got a couple that I will purchase, but for the most part, uh, if it's not a single family home, my interest falls off pretty hard. If it is a duplex, if it's a side by side duplex, I might be interested. But what this first one taught me is that I have no interest in top bottom duplexes.
And that was because of the social
Noise.
issues with the neighbors and all that, and the noise
They're
complaints.
always mad at each other, and they've probably always got good reason to be. You know, like I can't fault them, but it's a
Right.
problem I can't solve.
Gotcha.
Now let me ask you this: would there be something to hire somebody to help mitigate for you? Like, would that be an advice you would give to a future investor? Like maybe, isn't there like third parties who will handle those type
Property
of issues? Yeah,
management.
property management,
Yeah.
where you don't have to deal with that personally.
Well, even if you don't have to deal with it personally, then the effects of someone always being angry at someone that lives in such close proximity to them is, it becomes a really transient unit. So you're always moving in and out. You're
Mm.
always doing turns. So it's
Mm-hmm.
going to, even if you hire property management, it's still going to be really costly
I
because
get
that's
it.
not going to fix the underlying issue.
Right,
Because these people don't want to live together.
right,
Gotcha.
right.
Okay.
So
What you were saying earlier, I thought was really important about finding those mentors, and then kind of letting them know your intentions and the moves you're trying to make, and then they kind of helped you not make those mistakes. So, how would you tell somebody to find those mentors? How do you find those people when you're just starting out like you did?
yep, I would say, just like everything in life, right? It probably starts internally, right? Like you've got to be the type of person that doesn't uh, push away the type of people that you want to be around, right? So I would
That's
say,
a good point.
probably making sure that you're always giving extraordinarily more than you are expecting in return, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
for someone to call me and say, "Hey, I want to pick your brain," you know, while the right thing to do, sure, is to answer any question they might have. At a certain point, when you've got so many people asking you, it's just an impossible task.
Right.
And if it's not moving the needle for you in any way, not in like a selfish thing, right? Like giving back is extraordinarily important, but you just don't want to be that person that's always calling with a request. So, I got into life insurance was the first move after I left law enforcement, and I got into life insurance. And then when I bought my first rental property, I realized that there was a real lack of knowledge on the property and casualty side about investment properties in particular and how to write insurance on them. So one of the things I did there was got my property and casualty license. And then as I started meeting other real estate investors, I realized that everyone was having the same issue.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So I very quickly started writing the insurance because I found a problem that I could solve for other real estate investors of, hey, I understand insurance and I'm also a real estate investor. And I found some channels where I was able to get with some insurance companies that provided outstanding coverage to real estate investors that a lot of these local insurance agencies weren't really aware of or weren't utilizing. So I was able to provide value there. So whenever I was asking them to review the things that I
Gotcha.
was doing.
You had just helped them,
Right.
so they're more inclined to help you because you already gave them value on the insurance part of it.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha.
And to kind of second that, where I'm not the one kind of doing that, right? Like, so I started a YouTube channel where I happily answer Q&As. Like, I've got time set aside on a weekly basis to answer people's questions. And one fellow reached out to me and really just wanted to learn how to get started. He tried to move the needle in Arizona. Long story short, he couldn't. Now he's moved up here and he works with us. He does some like key parts of our property
Oh
management.
wow, okay.
But in turn, like, he moved here a little over a year ago,
Mhm.
right? He couldn't move the needle at all on the real estate aspect in Arizona. It's just the cost of entry was too high. He moved here where he could take advantage of the better prices. He solved a massive problem for me of doing all of our leasing and whatnot. And in turn, I mean, now he's got a portfolio of about 13 properties inside of a year. And that's life changing.
Yeah,
Like, his
definitely.
goal,
In a year, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
his goal whenever he first moved here was, hey, by the time I die, I want to have 10 properties. She's like,
And
1
he
year
did it in
later,
1 year. He has
1 year.
13, and you mentored him the whole way, obviously, right? Pretty
mean,
much.
I wouldn't take credit by any means. He put in all the work, and he's the one that is working really diligently to see everything through.
Oh yeah, for sure. I just mean by him giving you that value, kind of
Yeah.
like what you did for your mentors.
Yeah,
He
any
was able to
resource
pick
that
your
he
brain
needs,
more.
I'm happy to provide.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, he's an integral piece of one of our businesses.
And if I may add, I'm sure, given that he moved here from where did he say, Arizona?
Yeah.
So, and the cost of entry was high there, and for him to move here and make those type of moves to get 13, so basically he met a life goal within 1 year.
1 year. Yeah.
1 year. So that's why I see why you could find so much pain in the video I made with the gap within Black America, where the other gentleman was kind of vocalizing some things that you immediately found issue with. And I could see you find an issue with just how you just pointed out somebody who met a life goal within 1 year, took advantage of the opportunities within our city, and we had somebody complaining about how there's not enough opportunities in the city.
Right. So he
So it's
made an
really-
opportunity.
He made opportunities. So it really depends on how you look at it, honestly. Am I gauging that right?
Yeah, 100%. I would say, a lot of it comes to a lack of education. Because even this gentleman, like, he had no idea what he was stepping into when he got here, right? But he knew he was willing to put in the work. And I would say that, like, the biggest fault that I find with anyone that is in a financial position that they don't want to be in is, the way that the world works makes 100% sense. If you're not getting the results that you want, it's because your understanding of how things work doesn't make any sense, right? So it, again, all starts internal. And I found, like, the more that I have learned about money, because remember, just like I left law enforcement back in 2016, so I've been able to amass, a 7-figure or higher net worth inside of those years, where I have intentionally set out to learn about how money works. And I would say the more I learn about how it works, the more I kind of, and the analogy that I like to use, which all of them break down at a certain point, but it's kind of like our country runs on kind of like a board game like Monopoly, right? But so many people are trying to play Yahtzee on top of a Monopoly board. Like, no matter how hard you try, nothing fruitful is going to come from it because you're playing the wrong game, right? Now, if you tweak your understanding, if you start playing the game as it was so designed, then the amount of change that you're going to immediately be able to kind of manifest, or the fruits that you're going to be able to create, there's really no limit to it. And for the people that are wealthy, they see opportunity in so many different places that there's more than enough opportunity for everybody that's interested to put in the work. Right. So to say that there isn't any is, now there might not be in your market if you're looking to invest in real estate, right? You might need to move,
right?
Gotcha.
But to say that the amount of opportunity is the issue is probably a little bit.
I mean, you were upset about it. I mean, when you heard it, I mean, you literally, like, made a point, like, dude, I watch it and it was hard to get through, just because the ignorance in that type of understanding, to believe that the opportunities that may have held people back in the past still exist. I don't believe that. And I vocalize that too, that I think in today's age, if you want to be wealthy, I love how you focused on the network. And I think a lot of people don't talk about how building a network a network of people around you that will help you push the needle forward. Because for one, I always like to look at it this way. Like Tony was really good at saving, right? So there was a time where
At
there
what?
was a good at
Saving.
saving.
Gotcha.
Sorry, good at saving. So there was an income disparity where, let's say I knew I was making more, but our accounts were like opposite. So his wealth accumulation was different because of the decisions that I was making. So I realized that, wait a minute, let me surround myself by him and let me read the books that he's reading. Let me do the things he's doing. Now there's other people doing the same thing. What are you guys doing? And I like how you even fine tune it even more in realizing your goals and picking the people pertinent to your goals to help you reach that goal.
Yeah.
Just so you're not aiming at something that you really don't want to, be at. Just like even with my podcast, I even got inspiration from my son. Just how to help streamline things, how to make things easier, how to, reduce my time, because this is a business. Like you walked in and said, damn, do you take this down every day? So I have to find ways to help mitigate my time because time is so important right now. So, I love the aspect of network. I mean, I'm such a big advocate of networking. I mean, I'm not big on social media, but my LinkedIn, dude, I got over like 7,000 people that I just literally
It's that network.
Yeah, that network. I pick
Yeah.
their brains apart, and I just like because you have to be willing to be bad at something in order to be good at it. I had to be willing to be bad at making some bad videos, some bad audio, bad sound, just so I could be good at to get to where this is now. It took a lot of bad videos. It took a lot of bad text and messages. And I know that I have to accept that when I go into real estate. I'm going to make mistakes. I can help mitigate it by aligning myself with people like you. And even if you don't have the time, just reading the same book. So just for my listeners, that is so important to listen to what our guests are sharing and follow the steps. Like, don't just listen to what he say. If he point out a book, don't sit here and not read a book. Like, go read a damn book. Tony
Let's
like to tell me.
let's talk about that because I love books. I love personal development. I read a ton of books myself. You mentioned Automatic Millionaire by David Bach is one of the books you read. What other books would you say have really helped you that the viewer should take advantage of?
Yeah, so like as a Christian and as just also someone that is striving to get better, I think the concept of seeking wisdom is really important to me,
Mhm.
right? And if you think about wisdom, how to get it, the people that have it, right? There's not like this one source of where all the wisdom comes from,
For sure.
right? Uh, you can't pick it all up from one person, from one book. It's kind of scattered about, and you've got to you kind of find nuggets here
Get those
and
bits
there.
and pieces and then
Yep.
form your own philosophy from that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, from that, I would say that just getting in the cadence of reading is probably the most important.
Just
Now,
get going.
Not books like Twilight, but ones that like actually, are going to move the needle. So like David Bach is awesome. You mentioned The Millionaire Next Door. Um, even the people that you disagree with or that you learn you disagree with over
That's
over
a good
time.
point.
Like the Dave Ramsey's, Robert Kiyosaki's. That's a good example of people that are almost polar
Antagonists.
opposites,
Yeah.
but you can learn a significant amount from both of them, right? Like Tony Robbins. I would say that one of the things, like each time before I embark on something new, I do my best to read about 10 to 15 books about that particular subject
Wow, that's
before I
awesome.
make any moves, right? So, when you do that, I think one of the things that you're first going to notice is, the first book is really enlightening. You learn a lot of stuff and you're like, oh man, I'm ready to go. But you're not, right? The second, third, fourth book, you're going to pick up new things that the first author either said in a different way that didn't necessarily resonate or that they just left out completely, right? Now, beyond that, it's going to be really tough to get through. And you're going to start realizing like the patterns. And you're like, yes, I already know this. I already know
because
this.
you heard it before.
Yeah. And that is when you are actually like kind of approaching some sort of like expertise or proficiency in a certain subject, right?
Awesome.
And now the books that you read over and above that are you refining your own opinion. I'm just
Awesome.
like, okay, I see these three authors made this point that kind of resonates with who I am a little bit more, right? I think I'm going to take that side over these other people.
Gotcha.
And then, to go even further, you can start looking at the backgrounds of these authors, figure out like what level of success they were able to achieve. What were their intentions of writing this book, right? Like if you go into some topics like social media, you realize that a lot of these are just like sales letters for their marketing agency.
Very true.
Mhm.
Well, that's not really important, right?
Mhm.
That's not actually getting you the information that you need. So, the more books that you read like that before you just throw in the towel or try your hand at it, the better. Now, you're also going to reach a point where, at a certain extent, you just have to get out there, take action, and tweak things as you go. Because no matter how many books you're going to read, you're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way,
Awesome.
and you're going to have to pivot and adjust those accordingly, right? But I think that is how you should, the appropriate way to go about getting started in anything. Now, when I first started, like I said, I had that fire in my belly. I needed to provide for my family. I made the goal of reading like one book per day, and I can safely say this now.
Per day? Wow.
Yeah, but I was in law enforcement, right? So I stopped doing anything remotely police related. I backed up my patrol car, on the side of the road where they sell those sheds.
Yeah.
Backed up into there, turned all the lights
just
out, had my little overhead, and was flipping through it, man. I had things to accomplish,
Right. You got a purpose. I got to feed my family, man. I got to get out of here. Okay.
Hey, that's like probably some fucked up families down there that was going through some shit. Like, hey, what time did you work?
Got to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like, no time for that.
Hey, you know what? I mean, to your point, I feel like even when I'm at work during my downtime, I understand that time is important.
Mm-hmm.
So even, like I may not be able to read a certain material while I'm at work, but I do take the downtime to study the craft in which I'm building. So if I say, hey, how do I want to edit this? How do I want to learn this skill? How I want to save time? How I want to get better? It is all about time management and utilizing that time to get better. Because like you said, if you sit here and you got something, if you're really passionate about it and you're really going to make the moves, it really comes down to how you utilize that downtime. Because, I was telling my sons this, that I was like, they was mad. They was like, man, I'm tired. I say, listen, I work so many hours. I get off. I got to deal with you guys. I have to work on my business. I have to take the time to learn more, to be more productive. I have to land guests. Like in order to do all that, you have to be passionate about it. You have to really, and it's not a paycheck in it right now. But I know that I have the skill set and I'm getting better at it. And it's that fire in me. It's like, just like you said, you at work, you read to read a book a day, the amount of discipline that it takes to, that's probably calls coming through.
Yeah.
He's like,
now, yeah, just because this is the internet and crazy things happen, I answered all of the calls assigned to me.
Okay, all right.
But I went from
Make sure you put that out there. Make sure you put that out there.
Yeah, but in the downtime,
right.
Let's say I want to get started in real estate and take a similar path as you. I want to start and get my first single family home. How would you tell me to get started? Like, how do I actually do it?
Read 15 books. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you should.
But that's true. He said 10 to 15 books before you start.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's number one. Read 10 to 15 books, maybe on real estate investing in general, and then maybe invested in single family homes specifically. And then kind of, where would you go? What was number two? What would you say?
Yeah, the network. So we hit on that already,
Mhm.
right? And then, from there, the rubber meets the road, and you constantly looking for properties to analyze, right? Like the MLS. The properties are on like Zillow, Trulia.
And what's MLS for people who don't know?
Multiple listing services, I believe.
Okay.
That's just like where if somebody's like, hey, I want to sell my house. Oh, you should use this realtor. Well, this realtor just types everything into the multiple listing
To the
service.
MLS. Okay.
Now all realtors have access to this. They see it. That's called like a on market deal, right? So you've got the MLS that things are just sitting out there. Now, everything kind of ebbs and flows. So sometimes the MLS is a great spot for deals. Other times it's not, and it makes more sense to buy like off market deals. But just for the sake of like step number 2, start analyzing as many properties as you can, really.
Okay.
And when I say analyzing the property, like use the tools that you have available to you, like go on Zillow, look at all the properties that are for rent, figure out, once you find a property on the MLS, look for kind of the rent comparables. So find properties that are similar condition and what they're renting for, and then go ahead and consider that to be your income. and then you're going to want to line item out all of the expenses that you could possibly incur from that property. So if you see a property and it's got an old roof, we'll just go ahead and include that roof in like the purchase price of
Gotcha.
that, right?
Gotcha.
And then once you kind of line item out all of the possible expenses, now you know, and you have, you've put pen to paper, and you can determine whether or not that property is going to actually bring in income on a monthly basis, right? So now you've got your cash flow down.
Gotcha.
And it's worth noting that the cash flow of a property, like all of that, is just one of the ways to make money in real estate. You've also got the tax benefits of it, the principal pay down, and the potential appreciation. So, for people watching this that might be in California, you can do that as many times as you want to. You're not going to find one that is cash flow positive, right? You missed the boat about 50 years ago to get in the market and cash flow. But do that. I again, when I moved up here, I made the point to analyze one property per day, just because I wanted to get to the point where, because if you walk around with some of these people that have their portfolios, they just look at it real quick and like, yeah, it's a good property, I would buy that. It's like, how'd you do that so fast?
Exactly.
Right? So I
Right.
wanted to get to the point where, I could have those like kind of mental earmarks that I could just assess a property really quickly by. So
Right.
I wanted to analyze as many as I possibly could so that I could pick up that familiarity.
One every day, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but it takes like once you probably do like the first 15, 20, you'll be able to knock out,
It goes faster.
Yeah.
Through
Yeah, I mean-
repetition,
I mean
just
that-
familiarity. Yeah.
So
That,
one per
that
day
skill
is
you have
probably-
now to look at it that quickly took many years and time and hours of studying each one. Now,
Right.
do you also have like, and maybe wrong saying this, but like I know like a fear Tony had was like getting into property that need a lot of repair, and the difference between somebody who like have people in their family, people they know that can do that versus somebody having to acquire a crew to do that. Because if you deal with certain general contractors, you got ones who want to bust your head wide out the window versus some who like, I had one where I was like, I'm keeping you busy, I'm putting money in your pocket, let's work some deals, so
Mhm.
like, is that a whole nother skill set, like something else you have to like incorporate and learn? Or is that like, because I feel like there's some realtors who don't want to deal with that, but I feel like if you get into a property where it's all done up, then you're really, I feel like at that point you're paying too
You cut
much.
into your profit.
You cut into your profits, correct?
So he's saying like,
I probably threw out a lot. Did I?
No, it's all good. So, I mean, from the contractor perspective, contractors are always going to be one of the most difficult parts about real estate investing, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think, we probably all experience it. I don't know, how old you guys are, but, there has been a sharp divergence from like the trades, right? So the entire contractor workforce is way, way underdone, right? And the people that are proficient at it are operating like retail establishments that are, I shouldn't say that, not that are proficient at it, but like the people that, really want to grow, excel. There's a lot more money to be made in providing services to homeowners than there are real estate investors, right? So if somebody's marketing's on point, if you see, all their vans wrapped, all that, right? But that comes again with its own set of problems, right? Like we've got some contractors that we use that are really successful. They don't want to deal with those homeowner problems. So they love working with real estate investors because we've got that recurring business because they don't have to think about it. We're not going to call them and say, hey, ever since you changed out my garbage disposal, my garage door don't work. Stuff like that.
Hey,
So-
I'll be the type to call. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So finding good contractors that you like working with is probably no more difficult than finding like an employee that cares about your business just as much as you do, right? It's really hard,
Very true.
but it's a lot of trial and error. You're gonna get taken advantage of. You're gonna lose money in the relationships that you're building. But then, as you find one or two, they're gonna be just as appreciative of you when you find the right guy as you are of them. So it's a learning curve. There's no real easy way to do it, but it's one of those things where I would say from the time I started until the time like where I'm at now, I would say this is where I've become like disconnected the most, right? Is that first, like, hey, I've got my first property, or even if you've got like 5 properties, right? Like that's quantity, you're moving things, you're doing great work, but that's not enough to keep a contractor hanging around you, and that's not enough to get
Gotcha.
a contractor to bump you up whenever you need to
Mm.
have a call and need something, right? So now we've got the quantity in place where we find ourselves at the top of people's
You got the
lists when we
priority
make that
service
call,
over other people
right?
sometimes.
But
Gotcha.
then, if I think back to like the first 10 properties, yeah, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I was stood up, I was given quotes that were way too high,
Mm.
or that people walked off the job and I couldn't get them back,
Wow.
Mm.
So contractors is always going to be the most difficult. And I would say, just like everything else in life, if you have the ability to do the work yourself, like there's pros and cons to that. You
Mhm.
might not experience that the first few times, but your biggest bottleneck is quickly going to become you, because you're going to have more profits at the beginning that you're going to need to start in order to scale. You're going to need to cut down your own personal involvement. And now
Mhm.
you're going to be wrestling with, well, I'm not going to pay this person that much when I can just do it myself.
Right.
Right. So now all of a sudden you're working 80 hours a week,
Right.
and these properties are driving you crazy,
Mhm.
right?
Gotcha.
And
So quality of life is going down while you think you're, getting ahead in your real estate business.
right. So I would say, I mean, when I started networking with other real estate investors and just kind of observing, I realized that the people that had like 30 properties, they likely didn't do any of the work themselves, and they likely didn't do any of their own management, right? The people
Gotcha.
that did their own management and did their own work, you can't find many that have like more than 10 properties that are able to wear all those hats.
Mhm.
So depending again on what you're trying to accomplish and
Right.
where you want to be,
Mhm.
that doing your own management and doing your own construction, you're going to run the most profitable you possibly can with 10 units or fewer. But
Mhm.
getting past that hump is going to be really tough.
Diminishing returns.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think that was like the barrier of entry. So, in a lot of the books in which you were reading, did a lot of that cover on how to deal with contractors? I feel like honestly, that's like one of the biggest barriers for me because, like, I look at time and buying a property. Like, one of my buddies, he's on this like third property, and he literally he's making enough where he's not working, but he's
Off
spending
3
like
properties?
he has like 3 properties. I know he don't have me lying.
Okay.
But I want to say this is his third one that he's done it with. But basically at the point where he's solely working on, just fixing up his property, doing everything himself. But, everybody's situation is different. I know a lot, but I don't have the time to do that. And with dealing with contractors, I was overseas and like my sons are in the back. Like right now, guys, literally working on my deck because I had a contractor like literally burn me while I was overseas. And it almost cost me, somebody gave me a quote for like 7,000 to fix the work that he did.
Wow.
And luckily, got some other people come out and show me other tips to do it. But if this is your business, this is like your livelihood, you took, because when it comes to saving, and I can't speak for you two, having 7 children, you have to be very careful on how you spend your money. So when you take your money, you go and invest in something, the last thing you want to do is it blow away
For
or
sure.
you're not getting your money back. So you're being conservative, but you can't be too conservative because scared money don't make money. But the thing is it's just the contract. I guess that's like my biggest fear. I may be speaking for other people, but it's like there's so many contractors now who get high and so many and so many stuff. Like you want to save the money, but then I like the example you gave about it being like a retail establishment because they probably make more money dealing with a bunch of homeowners versus a real estate investor. So I don't know, man. I'm going all over. That's just my main fear, man. It's just
Gotcha.
like because people be like fucking with you, man, and I hate that.
Mhm. Well, I mean, it happens, right? And it's like getting a stripe on your sleeve, getting taken by a contractor, right? Like it's going to happen, and you're going to have to work through it. But I would say, real quick, contractors probably the best way to onboard them, right? Is we do our best. We don't meet someone for the first time and give them a full home renovation, right? We might say, hey, there's a water leak. We got some drywall repair. Like, go fix that drywall, right? Hopefully, they mess up. Hopefully, they have to come back out, and we get to see how they respond. Are they going to charge us extra
That's
when they
good.
have to come back out, right?
Mhm.
Or are they just going to say, no worries, I can't believe I did that, and keep it moving,
Mhm.
right? So,
So those are little tests
yeah,
that you give them where they
Mhm.
earn the right to have higher
right,
uh,
right,
pain issues.
right.
Yeah.
And then to go back once more on your one of the things about books dealing with contractors, right? Probably not. And I think a lot of the books that are written, you really have to look at the author and figure out, where do they come up with this stuff and why they put it in writing, right? A lot of these people are selling courses, and when
Very
you know
true.
the
So
people
glad you
that
focus
are
on that.
That's
Go
very true.
ahead.
the
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the people that are wanting to buy courses are the ones that are very well trained by our education system on how to receive information. So the more PDFs, the more handouts, the more whatever that they give you, the
Hmm.
more you feel like you got your money's worth, right?
Hmm.
So in a lot of books in dealing with contractors, I've seen like go through, make the scope of work, line item every single thing, come to an agreed upon materials and labor's cost, right? And like I say, we don't do that, right? Like one of the guys that I know asked me for like just to see the type of contract that I use with our contractors. We don't have formal contracts that both parties sign, right? It's a good day if somebody's given us like a scope of work. It must be one of their first times working with us, right?
Mhm.
Generally, we don't want to micromanage these guys. They are business owners, right? They're
Awesome. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
we don't want to go through and dictate exactly what each little thing should cost. That's immediately disincentivizing anyone from having your best interest, right?
Hmm.
So I can't tell you the last time or if I have ever picked out colors, picked out cabinets, picked out flooring, right? These
Mhm.
are all things that I leave up to the contractors because I want them to have pride in their work, right?
Mhm.
And if somebody takes me over 2 grand, I'm happy it was just 2 grand. While that would have been detrimental in the beginning, sure, but hey, at least they showed their true colors
Right.
for 2 grand. That's
Mhm.
not that's not a bad price tag to never have to deal with
Never
them
work with
again.
them again
Yeah.
until
You
you
know,
get to higher levels. It could be more.
right?
So take the 2 grand now and go away.
Mhm.
And then to answer like to not answer, but to like to add comment on like you really harping on that being your biggest fear and you being wise with your funds because you got 7 kids, like
And
respect
being
it.
taken advantage of.
I get it,
Yeah.
and I'm with you.
Mhm.
But like one of the biggest things that I think, especially going and reading like all these financial books, and if the worst are the people that are coming off that Dave Ramsey train, and it's just like I've been there. Like he was very valuable. I learned a lot from him. Right, like he helped me get in a better financial position. I won't say anything bad about him, but a lot of what he does is fear based. And one of the things that a lot of people have the sentiment of just like, okay, I'm going to have these investments, but if things go south, if it's vacant, like I don't want so many payments where I can't handle those on like my personal income. And if you are looking to build like generational wealth, build a business, there's got to come a time where you separate yourself from the business, right?
Gotcha.
Your deck is different because you having a nice deck is never going to make you any money, right?
You're right about
Maybe
that.
10, 20 years down the road, whenever you sell this thing, because you got the 11th kid on the way, then
I'm fixed.
you might you might be able to get a little bit more money
Right.
out of that deck.
Mhm.
But until then, and hopefully, right, because
Mhm.
10 years from now, there's going to be a lot of maintenance that thing needs.
Mhm.
So being able to figure out and separate your personal expenses from business expenses is
Mm.
completely different, right? So if
Okay.
you go through and if you buy a property the right way from an investment perspective, and when I say the right way, I'm saying the purchase price of a rental property, what an investor should pay is 75% of the after repair value minus any of the deferred maintenance on the property, right? So right off the top, if somebody has a perfect house, they want to sell it to me, I can't give them more than 75% of the market value.
Mhm.
And that is just, the amount of money that the business needs to make in order to take on an asset. We don't
Mhm.
want to have a property where we've got zero equity in, even if it's perfect, even if it can rent out the next day, right? You're not going to catch us paying market value for something. And then if we get that discount, well, we still have to be honest about the quality of the property, right? So if it needs a new roof and that's going to cost 10 grand because they just been stacking layers and it's got 4 layers on there, then you're at 75% of that ARV. So let's use 100. You're paying 75 because it's perfect. You got 10 grand for a roof. Now you can't pay more than $65,000 for that house. So if you get taken by a contractor, you've got 35 grand to work with before you're technically upside down or have lost money, right? And another reason that 75% is so important over and above you just having that buffer and you being an investor and needing to have that equity immediately is when you approach a traditional lender, right? Like they're going to want to give you 75% loan to value. So if the property's worth 100, a bank's willing to give you 75. One of the things that is really important to us that isn't duplicable in all markets, but here you can do it all day, is you can never have any of your own money in a deal. So if you buy that property for 65 grand, you put 10 grand in that for the roof. Now you got 75 grand into it. You go to the bank, say, hey, I got this rental. Nothing's wrong with it. It's rented out. I want to refinance it. Well, they're going to give you 75 grand. After, you might have some closing costs, but for the most part, you're going to walk away with all your money. And now you can take that 75 grand and do it all over again.
Gotcha.
Now, at that point, you've got an asset worth 100 grand. You got 75 grand against it. Your mortgage payment for 75 grand might be maybe $400 a month, right? If it's rented out for 900, 1,000, then you got $600 a month rolling in. And on paper, if you look at a lot of other real estate investors, they'll say, do 10% for capital expenditures, 10% for repairs, maintenance. If you're actually trying to build something, though, why even take any money out, right? Just keep rolling it back into there. So if you've got an account with your full 75,000 in it, on a monthly basis, pay all your expenses, but just keep adding to those funds. And when you got enough to do something else, always keep reserves for sure. But just add it to it and keep rolling it into the next property, the next deal. And then, you'll learn quickly. And again, of how you can amortize a lot of mistakes that you could potentially make over 30 years, right? So the most I've got taken by a contractor was for right around 30 grand. Wow. And we agreed to a price for him to completely do 3 properties. We came up with a payment plan where we were going to give him 8 grand every other week. And, he couldn't keep up. I should have never agreed to that payment plan. But in a nutshell, we started prepaying him for work not completed because his guys didn't show up, do what they were supposed to. A lot to not do with me or my money. Right. But he finished one home and started on another. So now, we're out 30 grand. Fortunately, we got those properties so cheap that once those properties were finished, we were able to pull out enough money from the bank to make up for that money that we were out. So we just had less equity in the deal where it would have been our profit.
So you bought such a smart deal that back end
it encompassed that loss basically.
Yeah, it didn't mess you up as much as it would have if you would have not purchased it at a good price.
Yeah, I guess so. But again, this is why you got to be tricky. Why you got to be very particular about what you're saying, and people that are looking at stuff on the internet need to be careful about what they're hearing and believing, right? So like you said, smart deal, because it makes sense right now, because I'm able to sit here and tell this story. But let me show you this property real quick, and you would take a look at it, and you're not going to say, that's a great deal. So, here's the house, and you could thumb through that, right? So all the windows are broken out. Now, sure, we bought it for $2,500, but at the time that we bought it, it was only worth maybe 30 grand. So,
wow,
we were looking at about 30, 40 grand worth of rehab. So I was already planning on being 10 grand underwater. But since the market increased and now that property is worth about
there's
90.
no way for them to see that, is it?
No, but we can look at it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you probably could put pictures on the screen if you really wanted to in editing or something like that.
Yeah. I'll post it, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So, wow.
But that's good to see, though, because that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. What do you look for when you see a property? If I see that, I'm not intelligent enough. I would run.
Right.
So, but you saw money in that. So what do you? I know you got that by just being familiar and having the mindset for doing it over time, repetition wise. But like, I guess like, what are the tangible things you look for? I would run. I'm telling you, I would run. Like, nah, we're not doing that. You know,
you probably should though. And another good point is, and this isn't for everybody, but again, there's just as many different ways to make money in real estate as there are people investing in real estate, right? So like, some people that might have that family connection or like brought up in the trades, they can take on projects like that for one of their first
oh,
properties.
for sure, because
No
they can just
worries.
fix it themselves.
But for me, we didn't take on a rehab project until we had over 20 properties, right? So like our
Oh,
21st
okay.
property
Okay.
was
That's a
our
good point.
first full
Very
rehab,
good point.
right? Before that, we were turnkey, maybe some new flooring, right? Like I replaced cabinets once, but like I paid one of
Such a
these
good point.
retail companies to
Yeah.
do it. So
I'm so glad you focused on that, because
Very good point.
to get to that 21st property before you took on that new dynamic. So basically, if you probably would have did that off rip, it would have been a lot more biting off, probably more than you can chew starting out then. Is that safe
Right.
to assume?
yeah, for sure. And then to even have the knowledge or familiarity to know if a
To
contractor
spot
was
that,
telling me
yeah.
the truth or not, right? Like you
Mhm.
could ask, other investors like what they pay for X or Y, but
Mhm.
and I would say another reason that one of the like having a network of people that have already achieved what it is that you want to is so important is like, I forgot I didn't say this at all earlier, but a good thing to do is only work with contractors that have been referred to you by other real estate investors that have used them, right? So if you've got a lot of, like, even if you've got 20 properties, that's not enough properties to keep a contractor busy full time.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, if investors' biggest issue is contractors, then if they're just helping keep them busy so that they don't run off and get scooped up by one of these retail places or anything like that, then it's a win for everybody.
Mhm.
So, the group of guys that I've got that, we share resources and whatnot, we're all the time using the same contractors.
So, just to give our listeners a few things to make sure they take away.
Mhm.
So, number one, before even jumping into real estate, they really want to do their research, right?
10 to 15 books.
10 to 15 books, and it could be audio, maybe even YouTube videos. And is it safe to say to be careful of the courses that are being sold? Would you say that?
I've never bought a course
I mean,
for
because
real estate investing, and I don't know of any investors that have done it that have anything worthwhile that would recommend doing it again, right? And it's tough to, like, especially if you got wrapped up in one of these expensive ones where you paid like 20, 30 grand. It's
Yep.
tough to, like,
It's a bunch too.
be able to look back on that and say you shouldn't have done it, right? So the people that learned something, they might say something like, "Well, you get out from a course what you put into it,
right?
right?"
Mhm.
But that's them saying no,
Mhm.
right? They just can't admit that they spent 30 grand.
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of times too, even with like the courses that I've seen, I mean, like you said, because for one, we brought up in a system that just basically teaches for one how to work for other people by digesting information that is just, force fed to us. And, for those people who go online and sell these courses, to even hear what you said, just how important it is for one to build a network of the people based off the goals you want. Not only that, but also like there's so many different type of real estate investors. So to have like this blanket course, you may be getting something that may not really align with your goals. So I would say, would it be more important to just build a network within your community? Like now, because I've seen online where some people say it's cool to invest far away from you or close to you. So would you say it's better to start locally to where the market permits it? Not like if you live in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
but
Probably depends on the market.
yeah, but
Like he was saying.
if the market permits it and it's close to you, is it better to do that?
I would say so. I mean, it's always important, like, people say that your employees will never care about your business as much as you do, right?
Mhm.
So even if you have the coolest uh, team in the world and you're far away, they don't care about your properties more than you do.
Okay.
So, it's always good. I know a couple of out of state investors that do a fantastic job, but they visit here regularly, right? Like, I'm I'm really good friends with a lady who owns, I think, about 20 properties here. She lives in California. Her husband works at Google, like, on the campus and
Yeah.
whatnot. But she lives here for like 4 to 5 months of the year, just taking after her portfolio, making sure that everything's firing on all cylinders, right? So to have the expectations of like what a lot of these online people say of, real estate as a passive investment, higher property management, that's a lie, probably put on somebody that's going to incentivize off either
property
selling you a
management.
course
Yeah.
or property management, right? And I would say that's another thing that you should look out for when you're networking with other real estate investors, or just networking with people that you want to be your friends, right? Like, I'm good friends with a guy named Seth Buechley. He has like a podcast. He's written some books, and he's really big on mentorship. And one of his key components of like what to look for in a mentor is they have to genuinely love you and want to see the best for you, right? Like, people show their true colors fast, and if a lot of people that will, when they see you as like new, and they are, a realtor, a property manager, sure, they're going to want to be your mentor, but what they really want is for you to be one of their clients, right? They don't genuinely love you. They don't genuinely want to see the best for you. They just want to add to their existing business. So, being successful, I would argue all day, it starts internally, and you have to be really intentional. You have to get out all the bad stuff in yourself, right? All the baggage, like, you brought up, that other interview first, and I would say, like, capitalism, the market, the economy, everything makes perfect sense, right? So if you see something that doesn't make sense, it's because you don't understand it, and that's about it. And I would say nobody cares. The real estate market, like, it doesn't care about you, right? There are good decisions to make, there are bad ones to make, but you as a person are pretty irrelevant, right? And like, the more of a stink that you have on you, the fewer it's gonna be so difficult for you to find somebody that genuinely loves you and cares about you, because you bring this stank with you everywhere you go, right? And that's just difficult. So, a lot of people want to be out here talking about why they're not successful, and they have a ton of reasons why, and they're almost all irrelevant. It's just because people don't want to be around them because they're carrying all this negativity, right?
Of course, the reasons are always out there and not inside of you too. It's always what other people are doing.
And I hate
or not doing,
the generational reasons. Definitely, when a lot of statistics point that a lot of the millionaires that currently exist are first generation millionaires. So basically, it's decisions that are being made within this current generation that they're making, and it's not like they're coming from prior wealth. These are first generation millionaires. So whenever I always hear this notion like, well, these laws, this, and this, it's just like, man, I'm getting numb to that noise, because like you said, is at the point where you have to make the decisions, you have to make the moves, and follow them back. Take the time, read the books, do the research. I also like what you said, to search the inner demons. Make sure that you don't have any baggage. Make sure that if there's anything you need to edify within yourself, take that point. So when you come to the mentor, you can clearly see, what you're looking for. And if you wouldn't mind repeating the person's name, just so they can refer it. You said that your friend wrote a book on how to look for. How to look
Steve
for
something.
Seth Buechley.
Okay.
Seth Buechley. Okay,
Buechley.
so
he hasn't written a book on mentorship yet. It's
okay,
in the works,
but his podcast covers at some point.
His podcast is called Business Done Right, and his whole his one of his big, I guess, cornerstones is business done right is a blessing to God, right? Just really just being out there saying, if you do your business right, like it helps everyone around you.
So we can put that in the show notes.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely do that. Just and like I said, I like the things you're pointing out just on how to pick a mentor, because I think that's very important, because you definitely don't want to get somebody who wants you to be their client, who's basically trying to sell to you. And coming from a position in sales, I mean,
that was our job.
That was our job. I mean, like, we would take advantage, like to
gain rapport, and sell based on needs of the person.
Yeah, and become the person that they need, that they ask for, just so you can get that commission. So it's definitely we're not like that now. I'm just saying we was making money, so I want to make that clear. But it's very important for a potential real estate investor to read the books, understand, search themselves, repair themselves, whatever they need to, find a mentor based off the goals that they have, and then build that network and around them and wherever. Because it seems like a lot of the decisions you made was definitely pertinent to that network too. Well, excuse me, pertinent to your desire to be able to take care of your family. That was that fire, and every decision you made was because
Based
of
on
that,
that, yeah.
based on that. But that also that network that you surrounded yourself with definitely sound like it led to where you are now. So
For sure. And I mean, a lot of people are uncomfortable with this when I've talked about it kind of on my YouTube channel. And I had one lady comment. She was just like, "Are you sure like this is the most like ethical thing to do? Like it sounds really disingenuous." But when I
Which
moved
part?
up here, sorry, I was prefacing what I was about to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's all good. Now I've got a bad speech cadence or the way I set things up.
Okay.
But like when I moved up here, I made it a point. I was not interested in having friends, right? I had great friends back home. I was not interested in meeting, new people to hang out with or drink with, right? So the only time that I socialized was as a means to accomplish changing my life, right? So the only people that I surrounded myself with were ones that had achieved in life what it was that I was after. So, I mean, I commuted up here to Ohio from North Carolina for about 6 months. Like my family didn't move up here until like October of 17. So even after we bought that first duplex, uh, I was still commuting. So, I mean, every moment that I spent up here was specifically to change the lives of my family, right? So I think at a certain point, you kind of have to cut out. Like if you are serious about radically changing your life, then everybody's got the same 24 hours, right? And most people are going to have to cut out like an extraordinary amount of things that are in turn keeping them back, right? Like Jim Rohn. I don't know if you guys are a fan
Absolutely.
of him.
definitely.
Yeah.
But I mean, he pointed out to some CEO a long time ago that his TV cost him like 40 grand a year. And he's like, "What are you talking about? I paid $600 for it." And she's like, "No, like, how long do you spend watching it?" It was like 3-4 hours a night or something. So, we don't have a TV in our home, right? I don't drink, don't do anything crazy.
Yeah, sound like
right?
Tony.
So,
I do the same.
everything, yeah, everything is intentional. And one of the analogies that I'm super proud of, I came up with it, right? Like a lot of the stigmas, especially if you grew up in a family that didn't necessarily understand money and consequently didn't have much of it, then you do hear a lot of things thrown out about people that have it, and they're almost all wrong. But one of them, and one of the high hopes, like in the lower income arenas, is winning the lottery, right? Like that's a big deal. But if you all of a sudden won a lottery, it doesn't change the type of person you are or any sort of the economic contributions that you make, right? So similarly, like it's commonplace, like everybody knows how to lose weight and how to, look good, right? But the amount of people that actually do that are pretty slim. So let's say one day you wake up and you look like a bodybuilder. Like given your daily habits, how long are you going to look like that bodybuilder
Before you go back to
looking exactly the way you
Right.
do now, right? It's all based, as painful as it is to hear
Habits.
for someone that doesn't have any money, is it all comes down to your daily decisions, your daily habits, your daily actions, right? Now, my mom, I love her a lot, and she got on me once about the way that I was saying this, and I want to make it clear that like your net worth has nothing to do with like how good of a person you are or aren't, right? So you can
Agreed.
still impact the world tremendously and not have any money. But if you're trying to figure out why you don't stack up economically and why there's such discrepancy, then it's extraordinarily important to look at your daily lifestyle, right? But to that end, there's also like this weird vortex of industries like law enforcement, the military, teachers, that the amount of value that they provide to the world is not realized financially.
Absolutely.
So,
How
just
much
want to
time we
clarify
got?
that.
Oh, yeah, we were closing. That was the so
Let me ask one more question.
yeah, go ahead.
Very important.
I didn't realize we're on a timeline.
Just
No,
one
no,
more,
no. I mean, like, he got a wedding to go to.
one more question. Now, you obviously you started with 0 properties. Nobody gave you, the portfolio you have now. You've earned it the whole way. How many properties do you have right now?
Somewhere between 240 and 260.
That's amazing. Okay, 240 properties. How do you scale something like that? How did you go from 1 to your first 20 or something? Like how do you scale? How do you grow so fast and efficiently? I know it's a tough question, but
But it's one that I've been living for the past 4 or 5 years, right? So
For sure.
it's on the tip of my tongue.
For
So,
sure.
2017, we bought our first duplex in August. Just to break this down, so we had 2 doors at the end of 2017. At the end of 2018, we had 21 doors, and that's deceiving because we closed on a package of 13 properties. That it was like December 15th or something that closed. If it weren't for that package, then we would have closed the year with about 8. Now, 2019, we ended the year with 38 doors. 2020, we ended with 80 or 84. And then 2021, we ended with 200. So
Wow.
early on, it was my brother and I's goal to double on an annual basis until we just couldn't anymore, right? So my brother is my business partner. And
Okay, so you guys do it together.
Yeah.
Since day one?
No. He came on board around property like 4 or 5. He lives down in Jacksonville, Florida. He's moving up here in June, but he bought a rental property in Jacksonville about the same time I bought the first duplex. We were independently drawn to real estate investing and took some action. So after comparing notes, and then again, just moving to this area, I was really leery of it, right? Like, it's not like in North Carolina, you can't buy like a condemned home for less than like $100,000. So
Wow.
like, why did I buy this duplex that had no deferred maintenance and was making $1,000 a month? How was I able to buy that for $35,000? I was waiting for something horrible to happen.
Right.
Right.
It seemed crazy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it didn't
yeah,
make any
Okay.
sense. So then the second property
That's
that we
dating.
purchased, yeah, it used to be.
Okay.
It used to be. Yeah, but prices have gone up a little bit. But it was the second property. We bought it for $28,000. It was recently rehabbed. It had no deferred maintenance on it, and I was standing in the living room of that house, and we hadn't even really moved up here yet. I was standing in that house, and I was like, man, I would live here. Like, I would move my family in like right now. And that's when I got on the phone with my brother, and I was just like, hey, like, it sounds crazy. And one of the recurring conversations that we first had was, why isn't everybody buying real estate in here? Like, how are these prices a real thing?
Gotcha.
And it's just like,
Too good to be true.
We don't have the answer to that right now, but like, we really need to buy as many of these homes as we can. So, a little bit of convincing, he came on board, and that's when everything really, really took off. We're really good friends. We're really close, and our strengths cover for each other really well. But all that to say, like, we ended 21 with 200, and now, again, since it's our goal to double on an annual basis, our goal this year is to buy another 200 homes. Which, let me see, I keep this pretty tight. So we have so far this year purchased 53 homes.
It's amazing.
So about 14 this month. And, again, I would say any business at the end of the day is about the same. Like, the market conditions change. You have to adapt. There's always value to add, right? So, the way that we buy homes now looks different, feels different than the way that we used to, because you can't buy a house for $28,000 that was recently remodeled anymore, right? But adapting, figuring out, what isn't sustainable for our business. So when we started, we used property management. We took property management in-house around when we had about 60 properties, and that was probably one of the more important things that we did, but it was never something that we wanted to do, right? So, like, when we started out, our whole goal was we did the math. We had like think like 6 kids between us at the time. And we realized that at some point we're going to have to pay for those 6 kids' college. So our whole goal at the start was 14 years from now, when the oldest one goes off to college, we wanted to have created a business that could just cash flow that college. But as it grew, and we started figuring out and always looking for and assessing, like, what are our bottlenecks, what is costing us too much, what can we do better, and constantly answering those questions and adapting to make those more efficient.
So
That's
just
how we've really scaled.
financially, like money wise, like how do you purchase all those properties? Like what you're saying is really mind boggling to me, and I'm sure some other people too. Just financially wise, how do you get the money to do these things? Is it just from your job, or are you just capitalizing on your ability to use debt in a good way, relationship with banks, refinancing? Like, what strategy are you using to multiply all this?
You said we're closing. You said you got a wedding to go to.
You said it was on the tip of your tongue, man.
Yeah. So at first, yeah, it was our own capital. Like, I had when I was selling life insurance, I was doing all right. My brother was doing all right. And, another thing that came with that I would tell everybody is, like, so real quick, I'm going to answer your question, but I want to say this because this is important, and a lot of the viewers, a lot of people that I talk to on a daily basis just overlook this, right? Like, it's most people's, like, grandiose plan to have, like, one rental, buy like one per year or one every 2 years, and hopefully one day have like 10, right? But you cannot rent out one property for enough money to cover all of the things that are going to go wrong with that property, right? So, like, you should look at having a rental property similar to, like, insurance companies writing insurance on a car, right? Like, you couldn't charge one car owner enough money if an insurance company only wrote coverage on that one car. They could go out and hit a bus full of kids or something, right? Like, how much premium do you have to pay to cover all the liability that you just caused an injury? So similarly, if you write out all the components of a house, how long they're good for, and set aside enough money to, when that thing fails, you have the money in your bank account to fix that, you're never going to have enough. So when we had fewer than 10 properties, my brother and I had, like, a painful conversation with each other at the end of every month about how much money we personally needed to put into that business to let it live to die another day, right? Gotcha. When we passed that 10 property threshold, which, if you just remember, we went from 8 to 21. So I've heard from other people that the same thing happens about 10. We experienced it at 20, where on a monthly basis, we were bringing in, at that point, I think, like, I don't remember, but we were bringing in enough money to where if any one of those properties had any issues, the cash flow was sufficient from all of them to offset those. So there's power in numbers. Real estate investing is definitely something where you need to play off, like, the law of averages or the law of large numbers, right? Similarly, in buying these properties and how we were able to do it. So, money is one of those things that no matter how much you have, at some point you're going to run out of it, right? So as I mentioned earlier, I think the appropriate purchase price for a property is 75% of the ARV minus any of the repairs that's needed on that. That 75% is really important because the bank will give you all that money back. So one of the things that I'm super blessed, super thankful for is when I bought that package of 13 properties, that was from a mentor of mine. He put that together. He seller financed it. He wrapped that together. It was a real awesome boost to our portfolio. Now, he prefaced it appropriately with, he said, "Hey, Ryan, like, I'm packaging it for you. I'm willing to seller finance, but I want to be clear that these are the worst properties in my portfolio. We don't want them."
You can have them, but we don't want them.
He said, "These are the most management intensive properties that we have. Like, good luck, He's like, and, these are properties that, fit inside of what we want to buy, and they would make a good boost for anyone wanting to start a portfolio, but we don't want them anymore. He has somewhere around like 800 homes here in the area.
Wow.
And he is, not looking to buy properties anymore. He's kind of looking to retire. So again, building that network, right place at the right time, looking to add value. We created a friendship. He genuinely loves me and wants to see the best for me, right? Which is one of the best qualities of a mentor. And he was nice enough to kind of show me his business model and how he operates. And I was at his office once. He had this package of properties that came across his desk. He wanted to buy them. He needed like 450,000. He sent out some emails. While I was there, someone responded to his email and said, "Yeah, I'll finance this." So inside of 20 minutes, I saw the guy raise about 450 grand. Now,
Wow.
that set off that thing in me of just like, I want to be the type of person that somebody just says, "Sure,
Yeah,
I'll
do
give
it."
you 450
Mhm.
grand. Right? So, in learning more about money, learning about, there's a book by Matt Faircloth called, I think it's called Raising Private Capital. Um, the stock market, there is a significant amount of money being poured into there. A lot of people don't trust the stock market, especially here in the Midwest, right? So alternatively, they've got their money in these like government sponsored vehicles like 401ks and IRAs, but they don't want anything to do with the stock market. They don't know what else to do with their funds. So I learned a lot about self-directed 401ks, self-directed IRAs, how people could take that money, invest it in real property where, unlike the stock market, there's actual accountability if I don't pay them as we agreed upon, right? Like they get the property. It's secured by a first position mortgage on an asset that they own outright if I weren't in the picture, right? So they could foreclose on me, get the asset. The 75% minus the repair costs, the money that I borrow from them, the property's worth more than that, right? So it's a really good, easy way to make additional money without the risk of the stock market going down and someone not being able to do anything about it.
Gotcha.
So we borrow money from friends and family, right, at 10, 12%. Those are interest-only payments. It's secured by a first position mortgage, so it's a promissory note and a mortgage deed. When we have that, we use that money to acquire and rehab a property. So if there's a property that needs 75 grand worth of work and it'll be worth 100 afterwards, we will borrow 75 grand to buy and rehab that property. That way, at no point do my brother or I have our money into it. It's all the investor's money. During that time, we're paying $750 per month, assuming it's a 12%, 1% per month.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, if it's vacant, not bringing any money, we're still paying that 750, right? Hopefully, when we get it finished and rented out, it'll rent out for like $1,000 to where there's a small spread there. And of course, that payment doesn't include the insurance, the taxes, or any of the other things that could go wrong with that property. However, if you are appropriately analyzing a property, then anything that could go wrong with that property on a short-term basis, you're baking that into your numbers. So you should have a relatively maintenance-free property once it's like stabilized because you've made those repairs and somebody's renting it. They shouldn't come across any issues. So your maintenance and your capital expenditures that people say you should set a certain aside for, it shouldn't happen because you should address everything as you're rehabbing it. So we use that money to acquire and rehab properties. Again, it's a higher percent interest rate, but it's great for them because it's more than they were getting with their money just sitting there.
Much
It's
more in the
than they're
bank or
getting
whatever.
with the stock market. I've heard recently that a financial advisor told somebody that they should expect about like a 5 or 6% return. It's like, come on now, you can do better, right? But we pay that 12% and it's secured. So in the event that we default, again, they get that property.
They get the property.
I wasn't even aware of that option.
Me either.
I mean, I'm assuming you learned that in those 15 books you read, right?
Yep. Plus meeting people, networking,
Okay.
realizing that other people are doing this as well.
Okay.
And, then once we kind of bundle a lot of these properties together, like right now we're doing a refinance of 48 properties. So it's going to be like right around like a $4 or $5 million loan, which is going to free up about $3 million worth of private money. So we've bundled all these properties together. We're going to a traditional bank. We're at 75% or less of the loan to value. So the banks are going to completely and wholly cash out all of those existing first position mortgages. So we're not going to bring any money to the table. We're likely going to get money back, which is tax free because it's debt. So it's not actually income, but that's money that my brother and I get. And now we've got $3 million worth of people that just got their money back, and they were making 12% or 1% per month on their money. They don't want their money back. That's a good return, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people love 12% returns. So because they don't want their money back,
They say keep going.
Now we got to buy $3 million worth of properties so that these investors can, or private lenders can get their money. So, it started, my first private lender was somebody that I went through the police academy with. He was a good friend of mine, and just believed in me, right? So again, I would say, when people hear about private lending, they're like, hey, I want to meet private lenders. And it's just like, well, you already know them, like I can't transfer my friends to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lengthy introduction if I could, but like
Right.
all of our private lenders are truly friends or family. Now there's a lot of asterisks to that because like most people probably listening, I didn't come from like a really wealthy network.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of our first investors, $50,000 might be all that they have, right, in their retirement. That's a
Literally,
significant
yeah.
amount of money
Right.
to them. If I mess that up,
They have nothing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So while it's a big weight to carry, it's also secured by real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also in a cash flow producing property because the property is appreciating. There's no principal being paid down, so that cuts off one of the legs of making money in real estate. But then you're also, getting the tax benefits of it, and you're getting the cash flow. So if you analyze a property appropriately on the front end of 75% of the after repair value minus the rehab costs, so that's how you know you're not upside down on the property. So now you're going to positively benefit from the appreciation, and if the market decreases, then you've got that 25% buffer. So if the housing market in the area crashes by 30%, then you're going to be 5% underwater. However, that's just the purchase of it. On the cash flow side, if you, again, line item the income and all the expenses, then now you make sure that it's cash flowing. So even in the event that the actual value of the home decreases, the property is still bringing in enough money, so long as you can keep it rented, that you're going to be able to make those payments during a recession. Because one of the things that isn't commonly talked about in like 2008 is that's one of the common questions that I get and that was the question that you lead it off with of just like, well, what are you going to do given this like
Downturn in the market,
inflated market or this downturn?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, well, I think the best kept secrets is that sure, the values of the home went down, but the rents didn't go down, right? If anything, the demand of the rental market went up because these people that had jobs on companies that weren't financially stable, now they get laid off. They got to go from this C-suite down to, mid-level management, or even in the mid-level management, maybe they went down to like the entry-level positions. Well, here in Dayton, our housing portfolio, we are catering to that entry-level demographic. Like our average rent is $850 per month. So, the property management companies generally do, if you qualify for that house, you have to make either 3 to 4 times gross that monthly rent.
Yeah.
So in order to qualify for an $800 home, all you have to do is make $2,400 per month. Well, most people can do that, again, gross, off just entry-level positions. So, what frightens me personally, and what I think people should be more fearful of than a market downturn, is in your local area, a large employer pulling out of that. Like Dayton is still depressed because GM and all the other big companies pulled out years ago. Yeah. So, now's a great time to invest in Dayton because we haven't really had any big employers come back, So now the biggest employment changes that we face are the base, which
if they leave, it's a wrap.
Right.
Seriously. It was like, I watched a video the other day. It was like so many billions of dollars in the local economy just come just strictly from RightPath. I mean, hell, my income comes from RightPath. I mean, I work there as a cybersecurity analyst, so I definitely understand the impact that would have if it left, just like a lot of other
large employers
that's already did.
Gotcha.
So in a nutshell, I guess that's how I do it, right? So I would say any notion that you don't have the appropriate people in your network, then you should first off start networking with people. Like get yourself in the right rooms of people that might have money to invest with you and believe in you. But second off, you have to, or more importantly, you've got to be that person that somebody would even entertain the idea of doing this with, right? So if you're somebody that has defaulted and, you know, uh, it's just not good.
It's like, why would they believe in you to invest in you?
Mm-hmm. Right. So, while I really don't agree with the way the credit scores are done, and your private lenders won't ask for that, right? But you still have to make sure that you're doing all that you can. Like I personally know that I'm not going to feed my family before I don't pay my investors, right? So if that's you, if that's in line with like a, hey, I'm borrowing this from you, I know that 50,000 is all you have in your retirement, and we're going to get this property, and this is my commitment level to you, then there it is. So I would say I wouldn't start with the idea that you need to find one person with millions. The person that that has 30, 40, 50 grand, that would still help you tremendously.
Mm-hmm. And if you get a few of those, it'll just, so they don't have to take as much risk. If you get one person that can take 5, 10,
right.
And I mean, just the plethora of information you dropped, the jewels, I haven't heard it. I mean, and I can't say that I've been well versed enough to as researched it as much as you have, but just the information you've shared for our listeners. I mean, I was sitting over here with chills, like, what? I didn't know about that. Like the private,
I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
The private lending aspect, because I think a lot of times just the barrier of entry for a lot of people is just not having the capital. Luckily, I was able to go overseas and save money, but that door opened through networking. But still, a lot of people don't have the opportunities. Mm-hmm. And if you're able to be that person that people will invest in, it comes down to surrounding yourself around by the right people.
And he said you started on your own at first. You didn't go into private and investing in, what was it, 6 properties, I think you said? 6 or 10, I think, where you got your first?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's, that David Bach, Automatic Billionaire, that book, like that was the first one that I really got my hands on. It resonated with me. I started saving like half of my paycheck from the day I was hired. So from there, I mean, when I left law enforcement, I was there for like 4 or 5 years. I was able to save up somewhere close to like 100 grand, right? Amazing. So I started with 100 grand. So, it's deceiving to say, look at how much I've done since 2017, right? Because if it weren't for the 4 to 5 years that I put in before that, saving my money, limiting my expenses, increasing my
reading
income,
the books, personal development, growing your mindset.
Yeah, I mean, so it's easy for people to start at 2017 for you, but the amount of years of time and energy and effort you put well before you even, like just to even get to 100 grand from making 44 grand, it may not sound like a lot for a lot of people.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. I mean, like that is a lot of money and to save 50%, I mean, you were very frugal. I mean, hell, I bet your wife was probably mad. Like, let's go out to dinner. You're like, no.
Well, I wasn't married at that point.
Oh, okay.
I was living off like $800 per month. Because again, I was a college student.
Okay.
I got into law enforcement like at 21.
Okay.
And I saved, half of my pay. So yeah, I mean, I remember kind of being ridiculed a little bit by my coworkers because I had a $50 fast food budget. And when that was up, that was up.
That was it. Yeah.
After the 5th, you're not eating out with me. Got my lunchbox.
It's funny, and it just surround yourself with people. I used to tease. Remember, we used to tease you about that
all the time.
This dude used to not like cash his checks at work. He's like, and we would like our money be gone. This dude used to like build them all up. You was doing it for a long time, weren't you?
Build money up. Yeah. I would loan people money and charge them interest. Yeah. That's all the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's
that was good. Like 20 years old.
Yeah. It's good to see that a lot of people are doing that, and something just that I want to make sure I let our people know. So the video that I made the other day was a wealth gap, the gap for Black America, wealth gap. I can't think of the title offhand, but one of the statistics I pulled was that 0.5% of Black America own 0.5% of America in like the early 1900s, and it was still the same now. And and it's something you share during the conversation about the decisions we make, the day-to-day decisions. And I like the analogy you gave when it comes to working out. We all know what we have to do, and all the people who've made the decision, who got the bodies that we like, man, that I want, we don't want to make the decisions that they're doing. And it's the same thing with our culture that I wish I would have covered in a video. We could look at other cultures and say, oh, they have this. It's not any laws that's preventing us from doing that. It's the decisions these cultures are making, these families, these people that they're making that are different. And instead of asking for a handout or asking for something to be changed, let's look to see what they're doing. It's the actual decisions. When how they circulate money within their community, how they how they invest their money, how they understand. They probably been doing private lending. It's a foreign concept to me. I'm 36. How old are you?
31.
31. How do you?
Even I'm 37.
37.
Even something simple as reading books.
Yeah.
How many people from our culture consistently reads books that's based on financial wealth and personal development? That's almost foreign to us,
Yeah.
And for him to
to read 15 books even before you get started. That's just to me, that's like you just waiting your whistle, because you still have to go into the field and learn it.
he's laying the foundation before you jump in.
Yeah. It seems commonplace. It's like you said with the analogy when it comes to looking good. It's easy to say, burn more calories than you consume. It's an easy concept, but it's not commonplace as we would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you've got to realize that, you're not going to look like that, but you also feel really good living the lifestyle that you do, which is why you don't want to give that up to look better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So similarly, like, if you are in a position where you do not have any money, then you just kind of have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, there's a perfectly logical reason as to why I have no money.
Mm-hmm.
And, if, like I'm really good friends with somebody that they don't have the financial, aspirations that I do. And that's okay, because they really like the way that they are currently living. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that if family weren't so important to me, if I didn't want to be at home by like 3 every day to hang out with my kids, then I could be a lot more successful and have a lot more money. But I'm choosing not to, so that I could be intentional with my kids, right? And I think that you really have to have that conversation with yourself. Cut out all of these other reasons that you could possibly have and kind of walk around with chips on your shoulder, because they're just irrelevant. And the system is not broken. Are there some systemic injustices? Maybe. But the amount of bearing that it actually has on your individual life is probably incalculable, right? So, to that, I would say back to, the system makes sense. If you're finding yourself in a position where you have no money, you have to look inwards and correct those things. If you are just starting out, if you want to get into real estate investing, it might be several years off for you. But what every single person has the ability to do is decrease your expenses, increase your income, and just provide, more resources to society than you personally consume. Like, everybody can stop consuming right now. We can. We've got an extraordinary amount of stuff that we are currently doing that we can cut out, right?
We're a hyper consumer.
Absolutely.
Nation. Yeah. Hyper.
We're taught to be hyper consumers.
You probably walk on my house like, damn, we got a lot of shit. A lot of my wife too.
But my wife's been telling me for over a year now that I need to get new shoes, but like, I don't care about my shoes and they don't make me money. You know what I mean? So like, that's not where my priority is. Now I could easily fix that, but then I'll have less to give towards those investments. So it all comes down to those decisions. And I would say, as well, like, in talking about the wealth gap and Black America, right? Like, it's easy to come up with a lot of reasons as to why that exists. And some of them truly may be valid. But, and I want to be clear on how I say this, like Dave Ramsey, when I was listening to him, he said like he just conducted like one of the largest studies ever done on those self-made billionaires. And the people that set out to become a millionaire, on average, it takes them 7 years to achieve that, right? So on the other hand, to then say, I've read articles that say it's going to take, Black America like 230 years or something to close that wealth gap. Which one's true? Because they can't both be true,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And I would say, us, I think we need to be careful in talking about the Black community as a whole, acting like we have to move as one unit, right?
Mhm.
Like as individuals, we have all been relatively successful, way more than any of these statistics would say, right?
Right.
So it's not like it's not happening.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that I think is noteworthy is in going back to like the attitude, the way you carry yourself, the chips on your shoulder, the kind of stink that you put out there, right?
Mhm.
Like a lot of successful Black men find themselves pretty quickly outside of the Black community whenever they achieve any success. They've taken the
Mm.
personal responsibility, they've made the changes,
Mhm.
and now, the initial network or whatnot that you came up with are all trying to like mooch off of you, find reasons to whatnot, So like us forming our own community, right, is
Mhm.
probably something that should be done. But
Right.
like all the baggage that we may or may not have from, us getting to where we came from to now, perhaps prevent us from actually coming together as like a successful group of Black men. So
Mhm.
rather than, putting all the fault on these things that were generational taught to us, it's also kind of like shame on us for not being better friends and more vocal, right, and doing
Very
more
good point.
for the community,
Mhm.
right? Like one of my good friends, we spend a lot of time in the title company, and she's always like, I've been one of the only Black closers in this area for the past 30 years. It's like, well, shame on you for not telling more people about it. It's
Good
not
point
like
too. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not like an injustice. And to your
Mhm.
point, when I purchased any of these 200 homes, not a single time was anyone ever like, what, you can't buy a house around here, you know
Mhm.
not any one bank said, what,
You're Black.
we
Yeah.
can't
We
we
can't
can't
lend to
give you a
you.
loan,
Yeah.
now while that may have been true at one point, it's
Right.
not anymore.
They look at
Right.
the numbers, and if you
Right.
qualify,
Right.
it's in our best interest to give you the money at that point,
And that's
regardless
what
of your color.
yeah,
Mhm.
and that's where like it may have been issues in the past, and I don't disagree with that, but I feel like at a certain point we just have to drop it. And I like how you just pointed out and not talking about it as a whole, and and I focus in the video about down to individual family units because something Tony and I talked about in our legacy video is just like how we had our household, how every decision we make, it just you literally just said it too. Every decision you make is really it comes down to that taking care of your family, building that generational wealth. That is your legacy. Everything you talked about and done is your legacy, and you know, and with your family, your children, grandchildren, slowly the Ingrams will be is its own thing, and it will just slowly branch off. And with the Rogers and the Youngs, and hopefully, like you said, we just build our own thing. And that's this literally just a portion, just a response to the other video I made, just to make clear. So, Ryan, man, you got anything you want to close it, man? You want to share it to our listeners, man?
And to your point about self-made millionaires, and like there is never been a better time to be Black in America with all the opportunities ahead. So it really comes down to, as we've already said it, and this is probably just beating a dead horse, but your personal actions, like your daily habits. So
Awesome,
So,
man.
got anything, man?
No, I appreciate your time, man. The knowledge you have given us today, and talking about the books and revealing your journey, and not being, not holding back. You dropped so many gems and so many jewels. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
no
And
worries.
as always, that camera just died on us, but it's cool.
We'll
It's
put his
cool.
Instagram out there and Facebook and all that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put it out there. I'll definitely put your information so you guys can be able to follow him. He has a great Instagram, YouTube channel, and I've been watching some of your videos. So
Thanks, man.
he's not pushing a course, so he's just pushing good information. Give him a follow, like, comment, and just with any video I make, it's an open discussion. So come back if we begin discussions on some of our videos. Sometimes it's people may disagree. Hopefully, no one disagree on how to build wealth in real estate. I mean, it's a clear-cut path. It's not easy. I don't think anything you said today was easy. I think it's going to be hard work, but anything worth having is worth working hard for. Thank you. True Leon Army podcast viewers. I got 3,500 followers on Instagram. I am thankful. I am thankful. Seriously, I'm thankful. Thank you guys for following, enjoying my content, and watching it. We are out.